this turned, so I'll control like the muting, volume, all that stuff back here. So I'm going to leave this turned down so you don't have to worry about whether or not I've got the power.
So what were you hoping for that we didn't get to?
So either put it in the pocket or...
I'd say whatever's most comfortable. If you'd prefer to have it hanging out, if you prefer to have it in.
Does that work?
Then it is for the slack too. If you prefer to have it out, or if you want to tuck it in the pocket, either or is does not affect the signal quality.
Gotcha.
We got
Okay.
Yep, we're all good. And then
See how hard it is to get in and out of the chair with this thing in my pocket and my skirt.
there's no notes.
Time to wing it. I think I'm gonna take my phone up with me, just in case. Well, if you can't figure it out, I certainly won't be able to.
Then I'm going to leave these in a always on state. So
Is it-
I'll control volume,
This is a
muting
dumb
back
question,
here.
Jeff, but
Okay.
is it on?
So you don't have to worry about are you on or not. You can just
Okay.
go up and speak
Is
the
there a
key.
battery?
You'll be all good.
Okay.
Put this there.
So when it comes to the questions, how we just all on at that point? or-
For the questions, I will kind of have you all on and at lower volume. So
Okay.
then kind of as I see whomever kind of chiming in, I can turn up the volume on
Okay.
it and bring the rest down.
Okay.
Okay. It's very
And
small.
then... And then could you say just a couple of words for me?
Good morning. My name is David.
Keep going.
Good morning. My name is David. Thank you for coming.
Right. And then,
Okay. Just in the pocket?
yeah, I'd say whatever's most convenient.
Okay.
And I know some
Does,
people...
does it matter if it's the pants pocket?
It does not. Nope.
Okay,
Nope.
perfect.
You should be all good. Dave, I got you.
Yep.
6.
Okay.
We didn't test my mic.
Thank you.
Oh,
Yeah, you're
I hear you live.
there it is. All right.
Kim, check on.
Testing 1, 2.
Doesn't want to turn it on.
I think he said he's leaving them all on, but he was gonna. Am I talking to the room?
Yeah.
I would recommend...
Just be quiet and talk this way.
No going to the bed. Yeah.
Yep.
I'm up still.
Thank you. And then same thing I'm telling everybody else. I'm putting these in a always on state, so you don't have to worry about futzing with anything yourself. I'll control like the muting,
Okay,
volume, all
and
that
then,
back here.
yeah, the podium mic will be all, is that off when we're talking? Or
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
Yeah, Mitch.
All right.
And then we got Dan on 7. And Dan, if you want to say just a couple of words for me.
Test 1, 2, 3. Test 1, 2, 3.
Okay. Can work with that.
All right.
And then I'm gonna leave these guys in like an always on state, so you don't have to worry about if you're live or not.
Okay.
I'll control your volume and muting, unmuting back here.
Cool.
And then if you have an inner pocket, that might
Yeah, we'll figure that
a
out.
little better. Awesome.
It seems to work.
Awesome.
If I'm talking forward, is that picking up?
Yep.
Okay.
Perfect. Thank you very much.
I just pushed it because I know you're good. I did the same. There is walkout, or there is music. I think so. Yeah. Yep. I'll be your Clipper supporter if you need. No worries. I was gonna sit while each of you. I could take your seats. You know what I mean? I've got. No, 7. We got a big floor.
Got my little note. I had the wrong title on the top, but that's all right. I know what I'm doing.
Can we find Micah?
I haven't found her yet. So I texted Risa. She's like, "Is everybody in their sessions?" I'm, no.
Oh, there she is.
Yes, there she comes.
Penny.
Yeah, that's all right. That's all right.
Stand here?
You can actually just Okay, welcome everyone. Welcome to this 11 o'clock panel discussion on turning corporate sustainability goals into project level actions. So we have a great panel of Wisconsin's industry leaders here today who are going to talk about the exciting advances their companies are making in sustainability to support the biohealth industry. But before inviting our panelists out, I'd like to introduce Mike and Westphal, who's representing Westphal Company, who is the sponsor of this session.
Good morning. My name is Mike Westphal. I'm the CEO of Westphal Company. We're an electrical contractor installing all wonderful electrical things, including solar panels and electrical vehicle charging stations to go along with this conversation. And I mean, the point and the title of this is, how do you take these large corporate goals that were just discussed in this keynote and actually implement them? And one of the reasons that I love construction is that it's such a team sport, and you can see all the people here, and that's just a small fraction of those required to make these big changes or small changes. It's not such, I think, a large hurdle to accomplish, as you guys will talk about. And I am a biochemist major, so this is my favorite day, and I love that I get paid to be here. So I'm excited to hear what you guys have to say. Thanks.
We really missed our opportunity for that to be our walkout entry. It was in the description there was going to be walkout music. I didn't actually think it was going to happen, so shout out to the Bioforward team. I'm Ben Austin with Findorff. I'm our sustainability manager. Super excited to have you all here today. Thank you for choosing us in our session. We're here, as Mike said, to talk about these big corporate level sustainability goals and then trying to drive action from them. You can see our title there. My Duolingo streak isn't Polish. After Sarah's talk, I think maybe I should just use a GPT to figure it out after years of trying to speak like a 3 or 5-year-old in Polish, but side note there. I want to just pause for a second and think about, right, we're here at the Bioforward Biohealth event, shaping the future of biohealth, innovation, impact, and industry leadership. I truthfully think that sustainability is an imperative for all of us, business people and people who interact with buildings, and sustainability does kind of overlap everything we're doing. You look at the sessions happening concurrently right now and in the afternoon, sustainability is woven into a number of those. So I think it just speaks to the importance of this topic. We understand sustainability is very broad, very complex. So we completely acknowledge we're not going to be able to cover with a title like we have every aspect of sustainability. But what we want to try to do, you hear environmental, social, and governance, ESG. We're really going to be focusing on the E there, so the environmental efforts within those broader sustainability topics, carbon reduction, et cetera. We're going to ask Kim to come up next and kind of set the table, being from the design perspective, and then you're going to hear 3 corporate profiles for how each of these individuals and their organizations are approaching sustainability, what they're doing to act on it. We're hoping to reserve around 20 minutes at the end for Q&A with an opportunity. I've got some questions of my own, but we will open it up to the audience as well. So if you have questions that come up, please earmark those and you'll have an opportunity to do it. With that, I'll hand it over to Kim.
Thank you. So when Ben asked me to come up with a fun fact about myself that fit onto this little chunk of the slide, I learned a new word. Does anyone know what a cyanophile is? So it's an animal that's really well adapted to winter. And in reference to humans, it's usually someone who really loves winter. And that's me. I know a lot of people don't like winter. I love it. I love skiing. I love snowboarding, skating, pond hockey. Like, my best memories are all things that occurred in below freezing temperatures. So for me, what's been going on in Wisconsin in like the last 10 years and especially the last 5 years has been a little hard. I count the number of days where we have skatable ice at our local ice rink, and I can tell you that last year it was about 5, right? So we know things are changing. And I know, as an architect who designs science and health spaces, the work I do contributes to that change. Because these are spaces that use a lot of energy, right? But they are also spaces that improve patient outcomes around the world because of the advancements that we see in health and science due to those spaces existing. So the challenge that we've taken on at Flad is to continue to promote that advancement around the world while simultaneously trying to reduce and ultimately, hopefully one day, eliminate the environmental impact of those spaces. And we're not the only ones who are trying to do that, right? We heard from Promega in the keynote. You're going to hear from the folks up here with me. The biohealth community has been paying attention to this stuff for a long time. And the thing that makes me really excited to get out of bed in the morning talking to these clients is when they talk about their values and what they're trying to do, it all just aligns to mission. There are a lot of things that play into their sustainability story, but ultimately they are following their organizational values. And they're doing things like setting science-based targets, trying to keep the world below 1.5 degrees warming, or they're following the UN Sustainable Development Goals, trying to promote economic development in a way that's good for all of us. And they're so dedicated to this that when Cytiva did a survey of about 100 biopharma leaders, they found that the majority of biopharma companies are going to use sustainability as their #1 priority in the next 5 years. They also found that some of these companies are actually starting to reduce costs through the sustainability measures that they're implementing. And they found that these companies are starting to work across their supply chain and coordinate emissions targets so that we can all work on this together. And we've seen this firsthand at Flad because we've actually had some of our clients reach out to us and ask us to set emissions targets in alignment with their goals. And we are really happy to do that because in the design and construction industry, we have known that this is an issue for a long time. At Flad, we are signatories to the AIA 2030 commitment, trying to get to a net zero emissions portfolio by 2030. We're also signatories to SE 2050, where our structural engineers are trying to get to carbon neutral structures by 2050. And we're signatories to the AIA Materials Pledge, trying to specify, even on health and science projects, materials that are safe, circular, and regenerative. And we're also really proud of what our partners in the industry are doing because we are seeing things like the contractor's commitment come out, where contractors are trying to promote sustainability and wellness on job sites. And the mechanical, electrical, and plumbing engineers have come up with MEP 2040, where they are trying to understand the emissions associated with the systems that they put into buildings and get to a carbon neutral point by the year 2040. So we're all kind of trying to figure out this emissions thing. And I would say, for those of us who really focus on buildings, even though it's not easy, our scope 1 and 2 emissions, we're starting to see a clear path forward. We kind of know what to do with those direct emissions that are coming from the site, and we kind of know what to do with those indirect emissions that come from purchased utilities. But after that, it's scope 3. And for me, scope 3 is a community problem because at Flad, right, as providers of design services, my emissions become my clients' scope 3 emissions. And the only way we're going to reduce scope 3 emissions collectively, and they count for like 80% of the average biohealth company's emissions, and the average company in general, most of their emissions are scope 3 emissions. The only way we're going to solve this is by working together. So I think personally, after thinking about this a lot, almost as though it's my job, right? I think personally the way we're going to move forward is by working together collaboratively, by listening to each other and learning from each other. And so that's the spirit that we're here in today, And I'm excited for the rest of our panelists to tell you about some of the great things that they've done to make progress at their companies.
Sorry, just need to set my timer so I don't steal time from my colleagues here. All right. There we go. All right, good morning. My name is Dave Lumby. I head up environmental health and safety, business continuity and sustainability for PPD, which is a part of ThermoFisher Scientific. So PPD provides clinical trial services around the world. We have around 2,200 people in our facility in Middleton. It's our largest facility in PPD. And we also at ThermoFisher have an instrument manufacturing group in Fitchburg and a chemicals group in Milwaukee. So pretty fair amount of strong Wisconsin connections. Personally for me, I live in Cincinnati now, but I have fond memories of Wisconsin. I met my wife here, we got married here, we had our first kid here, we bought our first house in Wanakee, and anytime I have an opportunity to come back, I'm very excited to do it. I lived in Wisconsin more than any other state. So about, and then yeah, that's as close to a fun fact as I have. So, about, I was going to say advance the slide, but that's my job. So, this is our headquarters in Waltham. So, we do in Massachusetts. We do try to take our message everywhere, and we do have solar power panels on the roof there. And our corporate mission is actually, that we want to enable our customers to make the world healthier, cleaner, and safer. And that part about the customers is not by accident. What we do in ThermoFisher is very, very much customer driven. We serve the science industry, so and our biggest sector there is the life sciences industry. And so we definitely know that our customers, the major pharmaceutical, our biggest customers, the major pharmaceutical customers in the world, or manufacturers in the world, all have very strong goals around environmental sustainability, and they've been asking us, what are we doing about it? And it fits so nicely with our mission. And we do, in addition to the parts I mentioned for the clinical trials, we make everything from antibodies to chemicals, beakers, Nalgene, Fisher Scientific, all that stuff, freezers. And then we manufacture drugs on a contract basis for people, as well as provide laboratory services like calibrations of instruments. So when you take all that in a variety of such a huge, such a huge wide business, how do you approach it? So I think we try to go back to the basics a little bit and say, what is the most important, where do we really want to double down on sustainability? So as a really large corporation, revenues last year were $42 billion. You can't, if you want to do something meaningful, you need to zero in. And so we started back with, there's human health is really what we want to protect. There's no planet B. The biggest existential issue, in my opinion, and the company approach, is carbon emission reduction. And so that's where we've put the majority of our energy. We do have goals around waste, we have goals around water, but carbon emission is where we've really doubled down because that's what we think needs to be solved now. So the big corporate goals we have are 50% reduction in our scope 1 and 2 by 2030, 80% renewable electricity in all our facilities around the world by 2030, net zero, jumping over to the right, by 2050. And then for our scope 3, we wrestle with that like everybody else. We've had our targets validated by Science-Based Targets Initiative, and we ask our customers to do our suppliers to do the same thing, and that's where our big push is right now on the Scope 3 goal. And I know it sounds like we're a big corporation, but the way we got there is very simple and I think applies to any kind of business. You know, what do you need to do in your business? What are your goals? Then the next thing we did is how do we measure it? So in the last 3 years, we've started actually, you know, getting the carbon footprint from every one of our facilities for our Scope 1 and Scope 2 emissions. Before, we didn't have a centralized database. Another Wisconsin connection, we use Sphera for that, which is here in Madison. But they're a great partner, and if you need a database for ESG work, they're very good. Then we took a look at where are Scope 1 and 2 emissions coming from, and you can see that the dark gray box up there is our Scope 2, the electricity. So we said, okay, we got a solution for that. I'll come back to that on the next slide. But then, you know, the big hard nut to crack is what do we do about the Scope 1 emissions? We use natural gas everywhere in our facilities where we need to provide heat. But that's really the key for us is how do we, between now and 2050, electrify or either reduce the need for the energy or switch it over to electricity. One of the things we've done as well is when we do a new facility, on the bottom left, we have a construction guide, and it's, you know, that makes it look really small, but it's a good 100 pages on the things that we want from both an energy reduction as well as an electrification. And any of our new capital projects have to go through that process. You know, our corporate team has said this is what we're doing, these are our goals, and the capital doesn't get approved if we don't, if we don't follow through on those goals. On the lower right, in our clinical business, we've figured out, okay, it's not so much about the facilities we operate, a little bit for our laboratories, but it's really about what are the things that matter in a clinical trial. So we have patients getting to the investigator sites and, you know, the travel impact there, principal investigators meeting, production of the drug product that goes into that. And so, you know, the same thing applied there on a miniature scale that we did to ThermoFisher of, you know, what are the important levers that we can pull? So one of my colleagues, Michael Cohen's, built a calculator that we can start to work with our customers on and show them, hey, these are the things, the decisions that you can make in the clinical trial, balanced with regulatory approval, balanced with cost, balanced with whatever else might be important to them. But these are the things, the levers you can pull to make a decision about how to green your clinical trial. And then lastly, you know, we always want to engage our employees, so we do have green teams where we work on some of the less capital-intensive things, like if we want to do recycling, or, you know, there's good programs with laboratories now for pipette tip recycling, glove recycling, things there where we can really have employee-led selection of projects and targets. And so I said I'd come back to the electricity. So on the last slide. You know, the way we got to, sorry, I should set it up better. The way we got to that big reduction in the Scope 2 is we ended up, at the corporate level, they set up virtual power purchase agreements. And so we've bought into a large solar farm in the US, a large wind farm in the US, and one of those is already online, the other one's in process. By the time they're online, that will put an equivalent amount of green energy into the US North American grid that ThermoFisher uses in its entirety in North America. We have a similar arrangement in Europe, and then there's areas where you can't necessarily do it that way, and we work with renewable energy credits. But you saw on that slide before, we pretty much get our electricity emissions down to zero. That's the way to do it. And I'm sure somebody's thinking, yeah, that's nice for you, but I can't buy into this virtual power purchase agreement. But there are consortia that you can join. So there's one called Energize. I'm going to say it again, Energize. It's anybody who supports life sciences can pretty much join that, and you can buy your little section of it and do the same sort of thing where you put a certain amount of green electricity in for the not green electricity that you might actually burn in your facility. So that is really our plan, and it's kind of simple. When you boil it down of, set your targets, have them approved at the higher level, make sure you're aligned with your customers, measure what you're doing, set a plan, figure out what you're going to do with scope 2 first, then start working on scope 1. Scope 3 is still coming, like us for everybody else, but you do need to address with your customers. So thank you very much for your attention. And I am followed by Dan Motl from Promega.
Good. Thank you, David. So Ben threw me for a loop with the fun fact. I really struggled with that and had a conversation with my wife. What am I going to come up with? So she said, what about your paintings and your artistry? And this is something I kind of picked up during COVID, a nice hobby, and watched hundreds of hours of videos online on how to do this, so I graduated from YouTube University on that. But I said to her, if I put that on there and if they were to see my work, they would think it's a funny fact, not a fun fact. So she goes, don't worry about it. She's my harshest critic and my biggest fan, and that's why it goes. So my role or bio indicates that I'm a facility consultant for Promega. Previous to that, I was their senior facility director for 10 years. And during that time, I was very fortunate to be a part of a huge spurt in growth with the company from a facility perspective. We had a lot of construction going on. And so I'd like to share some of the strategies that Promega has used to incorporate sustainability into their new construction projects. So for the first slide here, I have to give a shout out to the Promega sustainability team. They do a great job. They're very passionate. They produce our sustainability report, do all our reporting, and really drive the mission that we're trying to accomplish. So this kind of shows our status as of today. We've been reporting EcoVadis for over a decade, and we're in the process of integrating the ISO 14001 management system. We're examining and planning for the best way to commit to science-based targets, and our goals are, short-term goals are renewable electricity by 2025 and the utility reductions and waste reductions by 2030. Whoops, went a little too far on this. There we go. Okay, so starting out, looking back several decades, some of our early building sustainability efforts were focused on employee and environmental benefits. And as we entered this era of new construction growth, our sustainability efforts really evolved into incorporating advanced technology and sustainable features within our new buildings. So throughout this evolution, Promega has been able to design and construct their buildings to probably a 50 to 100-year life cycle. And what that does is it allows us to really consider the quality of construction and the systems we put in and the long-term sustainability benefits for that. All of our facilities include what we refer to as white space. You see in the upper right picture there. This provides flexibility and growth for changing business needs over time and being able to adapt to growth and new business needs. We also focus on building systems to enable them to adapt to sustainable technology that either may not exist today or may not be able to fit the day one budget of the project. So at the onset of our new construction growth, Promega established a global planning team. And this was kind of a key effort to bring together a core group of directors and people within the company who would establish the goals and visions for our new buildings and determine what path they wanted to take. That committee oversaw development, planning, implementation of new construction projects, both domestic and abroad. That global planning team also made a practice of engaging employees, especially the residents who would be living in the building. So this part of the programming and planning process really helped create functionality and inviting spaces to sustain comfort, innovation, collaboration for the whole life of the building. So this slide is an outcome of one of those exercises. It shows what the building residents wanted to see within that building. And it's used as a tool by our design and planning team to really establish the personality and features within the new building. And you can see several features, the green, the word green, innovation, bringing nature in, collaboration. All those things kind of tie in to promoting the sustainability within the building. So benchmarking is another valuable tool that Promega has adopted within our design for new buildings. And benchmarking is, for us, it's the process of researching and learning from others' successes and failures to help us influence the vision of our building. And I would say that even like the failures are important as the successes when it comes to understanding, how far can we go with technology, what are its capabilities and limitations, and how can we apply that to our facility to make it the most efficient possible, but yet manageable from an operational standpoint. So this particular example, it's a facility in Winnipeg, Canada, and we toured this during the early stages of planning for Promega's research and development facility, the Kornberg Center. And this was one of the first buildings in North America that featured a double wall facade with natural ventilation, thermal floor slab heating and cooling in a very challenging climate. The day we stepped off the plane in Winnipeg, it was in January, and it was 20 below zero that day, but it was sunny. And so what we were able to witness was this building in a moderate natural ventilation mode with its double wall facade capturing that solar heat and allowing the openable windows to operate within their control parameters. So it was features like this that helped influence some of our design in our research and development building. And these are a few snapshots of our Kornberg Center here. And you can see on the left, we implemented the double wall facade with openable windows. And the interior atrium, this building is set up with thermal slab heating and cooling, as well as active chill beams. It employs timber structure and a number of other different sustainability features. So that Manitoba Hydro building really did have a pretty strong influence and impact on our visit. And we also leveraged our contact at that facility as we progressed with our design to understand their pitfalls and how they managed to work out the bugs and make sure the building went into a very efficient mode of operation. So this last slide here shows the Kornberg Center and kind of a summary of the different sustainability features that we've incorporated into that building. Again, the double wall facade, natural ventilation, thermal slabs, rainwater collection, green roof, and there's others too. We've got heat recovery, chilling in this building, displacement ventilation, and a number of interior features as well. So we're very happy with the facility. It's an award-winning facility, and as you can see on the slide, our goal was to produce a building that operated using 65% less energy than a standard building with standard systems in it, and we were able to achieve that. So, thank you. Next, I would like to introduce Jeff Bartels from Exact Sciences.
Right on time. Perfect. All right, good morning, everybody. I'm Jeff Bartels, Manager of Facilities Engineering at Exact Sciences. I've been there about 7 years. Background's kind of in alternative transportation fuels and energy consulting, which brought, I think, kind of a neat profile to some of the work we did at Exact with these new buildings. And fun fact about me, I guess I build a lot of mountain bike trails and ride them hopefully as well. So something I do in my spare time. So. So Exact Sciences, many of you probably heard of us. We are a molecular diagnostics company based in Madison, Wisconsin, focused on the eradication of cancer. And through that, it's a variety of products around the screening and then guidance of treatment around cancer. And specifically, you probably know about Cologuard, the main product that really launched in Madison about 10 years ago. And that product is a home-based stool test for colon cancer. Which kind of brings us to some of the stories. So Exact Sciences came to Madison about 15 years ago, eventually FDA approval of Cologuard product in 2014, and went from that state of probably, like many can maybe relate, where you're starting out in a leased facility in a small part of a building to having a whole building to having many buildings. And when I joined is right when it jumped to really the campus level. So what I'm showing on the screen here is two of our campuses in Madison. On the left is our innovation headquarters, and that is a LEED Silver building. And on the right is Discovery Campus, which was the old Rayovac site, that has about 850,000 square feet of new construction and achieved LEED Gold status. Our approach to sustainability, I think as a younger company, we don't have quite goals set yet. To date, we have not published a target for reductions, but we've stepped through it more in like a project-based approach. And like I pointed out in the previous slides, through achieving LEED on new construction projects. And through that effort of achieving LEED, we learned a lot about best practices for these labs and developed kind of our own standards that we apply to all new remodel and construction projects to make them achieve high performance. The other thing we've done is on waste, and it falls around our core value of just doing the right thing. So with plastics in Cologuard, there's a tremendous amount of plastics involved in the return shipment and in lab processing. So from the start, we want to keep that out of the landfill. And what we did is install a machine that shreds and decontaminates that waste, allowing it to, instead of going to the landfill, to be a recyclable and marketable product that we can sell. And what I'm showing on the screen here is a baler we just installed about a year ago, which Cologuard does a lot of packaging as well, and a mixture of plastic and cardboard, making it really challenging to recycle or separate. So we installed this technology to bale the material, making it more dense for transport, which opened up the opportunities for disposal, and we can send it to a waste-to-energy facility. And finally on this slide, this whole slide is one page from our annual ESG report. We've started publishing that a few years ago, and through the process of collecting all that data, you learn quite a bit about what's going on in your carbon emissions, and you can make changes accordingly. But we hold ourselves accountable through providing this data annually on our performance as one way of tracking. So being around all that growth in so many years, seen a lot of different projects, and I'm going to talk through a few things about construction and building these sustainable buildings that I think are really important. So to start with, it's really good, efficient system and equipment selection, but it really goes a step before that in understanding the requirements of the process. There are a lot of labs out there. With Cologuard and some of the labs we built, our process might be a little bit unique. We have temperature requirements, we may have a lot of heat load in spaces, things like that make it so we right-sized a lot of systems to best match our needs, which includes understanding your needs from reliability, serviceability, just ease of operation throughout. So setting the systems from the start and what you want really is the foundation for from there forward to get the systems operating correctly. And from there, it was a process to find a correct controls vendor to help us out with a proper system that we could get the data out of the system, we can tune it, we can control operations going forward. And that's been really key to maintaining the building's performance over time. And finally, I really want to stress this point, which is commissioning. A lot of time needs to be spent on this, and the lead new construction process guides a commissioning process that gets the commissioning agent engaged early on in the process through even design reviews, through construction site observations, to really see those systems being built and guiding the commissioning tests, which ultimately make sure everything's performing correctly. I bring up commissioning, it's so important because with a lot of these systems coming from many, many different vendors, all have to integrate together and make this whole building work as a whole. And as you can imagine, with all these different vendors, different control systems, different parts, making them all function is so key to getting the value out of the building. The features that were designed, without that commissioning, you don't get the performance you'd expect. And we've seen some really good successes through those commissioning efforts. On the right, you see our Discovery Lab, clinical lab and warehouse facility, highlighting some of the sustainability features of that building. I just want to point out a few things about it in particular. And one is on our lab air handling systems and decoupling the cooling load from our ventilation needs. And that was really key to matching our systems to the process that we have. And with a lot of automation, there's a lot of heat load. A classic way to do it is blow more cold air at it, right? But with a lab, that's all 100% outside air, and it's very expensive to heat, cool that in our varied Wisconsin climate that is all over the place at times. So by decoupling that, we put in cooling equipment closer to where we generate the heat. And just think of it, space is always at a premium in these projects, even above the ceiling. And ductwork that's quite big, we can transport that much cooling energy with just a small pipe instead. So it works much better for us and really eliminated the overventilation that we may have otherwise had in those spaces. The other one, knowing that this is a lab, is heat recovery. And we installed energy wheels that cut our ventilation energy by 50 to 85%, depending on the climate, season, et cetera. Those have been really good for success of those systems. I point out a few others on there, a lot of efficient equipment components, and then integrating that all together through controls. As a result of that, our lead performance on this building was modeled at like 37% energy savings over a code baseline for equivalent lab. And we did truly achieve that. And since then, we've improved performance by probably 10 or 20% from that benchmark square foot, which, if I can get to the next slide here. So what do you do once you have a building? How do you keep it there in terms of performance? And something I recommend is doing a monthly review of your utility information and understanding, how the building is performing. Are there anomalies? What can you do to keep it there? Back in the day, I think it was a lot easier because we had only MG&E accounts. You could log into one utility provider and see everything you needed. And the dashboards from utility providers are only getting better. But as we expanded and we have facilities throughout different states and probably 20 utility accounts to log into, it just becomes impractical. So a great tool that I've used at Exact, as well as even before Exact, was Energy Star Portfolio Manager. And it's easier than ever to link your utility accounts to that tool and see all your buildings side by side, put in its performance metrics, and benchmark against yourself, but also benchmark against your peers. And that's been really successful in terms of finding opportunities to improve, maybe set some goals, and hopefully achieve them. And that's where we've definitely seen our building energy use decrease over time through, I guess, the investments in the equipment, but also the investments in the control systems that allow us to continuously tune it, and all the commissioning, which is ongoing as well because we always keep changing our processes. So with that, thank you, and back to Ben for our questions.
Thank you so much, Jeff. Big shout out to our panel. We are perfectly on time, so I think I stressed everybody out about time. I obviously stressed everybody out about the fun fact, but I think it gets a little deeper, right? We've all got a little nugget. Once you see Jeff in the hall, you're gonna talk about building mountain bike trails and where they are and things like that. So I have some questions of my own that I'd like to start with. Before I jump in, we had a few planning sessions to get to this point. Obviously, I wrote the topic description and it's very broad. So I think we're trying to thread this very intricate needle of a very broad topic. As Kim went into, there's a lot of jargon, standards, ISO 4001, science-based targets. So there's like a lot of vernacular that if you're not familiar with this space might be like, whoa, but it's the reality of what we live in. And so I think my only observation, right, we're a general contractor. We get to have conversations with all kinds of building owners. It's science and tech sector, it's K-12 publicly funded education. At the end of the day, I think it's really the what is sustainability? You didn't hear the same definition 3 times from Promega, Exact, and PPD about what they mean when they say sustainability, right? So you need to come up with your own personal definition for what you mean. And then ultimately, to David's point, why? Why is sustainability important to you? And ultimately, it's gonna go back and tie to your mission. Who are your stakeholders? What are you trying to do, right? There's economic side of that, there's social side of that, there's a lot more to it. And then the how, what Jeff just left you with, and Dan got into a little bit more too of like the building specific strategies. This stuff is detailed and complicated, and it pulls in design, construction, and other professionals. So I think that what is sustainability, why is it important to you, and then how you get it done are really the big pillars I think we want to have you walk away with. With that, one topic that came up in Sarah's keynote this morning is collaborations and partnerships. So Dan, because Sarah was Promega, I guess I'll start with you. Maybe can you give an example or your approach to collaborations and partnerships related to the buildings you were involved in?
Sure. I think, first of all, I think collaboration needs to start internally. As a company or representative of the owner, it's really important to build a team that's focused and crosses paths with facilities and sustainable practices involving maybe your sustainability officer or team with your facilities people, maybe with directors or corporate level managers who all kind of develop the strategy and focus for what you're trying to achieve. Once everybody's on board with that, the external collaboration, we relied very heavily on our design team, our consultants and sub-consultants. We had specialty consultants in the case of the Kornberg project and another project over in Germany. We hired a firm from Germany who specialized in building modeling and natural ventilation, had quite amount of experience. Those are the people that actually connected us to the building in Winnipeg there. So leveraging their expertise and experience is big. And then the next stage is the contracting level, is making these designs and ideas buildable and, within your budget, within your schedule, and going down that road to kind of put the whole plan together. It was mentioned during the intro, it is a team effort. And it needs to start as a team effort and follow through as a team effort. And then lastly, we reached out to our utility companies, focus on energy, even our own internal finance and accounting people to understand the benefits of these strategies in terms of how we work with the utilities, how they bill us, how our tax benefits apply to these things. So that's kind of a picture of that.
And then I guess I'll flip that question, knowing we have 3 owners and a designer. Kim, I guess from your perspective on the design side, thoughts?
A lot of good stuff. On the design side, we talk about integrated design, and for us, that's really making sure that when we're working on a project, we've got a really great MEP partner, we've got a great structural engineer, and we can make sure that everyone who's involved in the design is actually having their part of that conversation represented and is communicating that to the owner so that everyone's on the same page as we're designing a project, what the goals are, what we're trying to achieve, how we're trying to achieve it, and what's going to happen after the project is built. And when we can interact with our contractors as well during design, that's another great thing. I mean, I think the first conversation Ben and I ever had was about EPDs in Wisconsin and were they available or not, and Ben could push from his side and I could push from my side, and a lot of great progress gets made that way. So I think integration of all the disciplines is really key to success.
Great, thanks, Kim. One more for me, and then if there's questions from the audience, I'll take it then. Going back to our session title, we talked about broad corporate drivers and kind of the context with which these goals sit within. So on the second half of our title, on the project level actions, I'm hoping to go down the line. David, I'll start with you, and we'll just go right to left. If there's one thing you can identify or call out to this group for how you get the work done, specifically around that energy and carbon reduction space, what do you think is most important for the audience to take away?
So I think for us, it was really around setting those goals, having buy-in from the corporate leadership, because it's not a minor undertaking. And for us, it really was about the carbon and what do I do to electrify over the next year, 30 years. That glide path we had. Part of what we ended up doing was working with our engineering firms to figure out at our top 100 carbon emitting sites across the corporation, when are we hitting end of life on equipment? So if we're going to hit end of life on a boiler in 2 years, we don't want to replace it like for like with a gas boiler, put in electric. If we can't put in electric, do a hybrid so that we can flip a switch at some point going forward. But it's definitely not a sprint, and so you want to set yourself up to run it as a marathon and think about where do I want to be in whatever your target date is, 2045, 2050, and really think holistically about how you're going to get there.
Going to a project level maybe thought is I think finding the right design team and construction team that kind of matches your company culture, that really fits with what you want to do. I think that's really key. And going specific to a project, I think a really valuable person in the design process is the energy modeler, especially when these get into a high performance building. That energy modeler can, to give you an example from Exact, is when we're going through the lead process, you're getting ideas from all over the design team, the construction team, the owner, and eventually you want to understand the value of those ideas. And through that energy model, you can help understand which one's the most valuable, because we're always constrained in some way with capital or whatever that may be. And this can at least help you prioritize implementing the things that are going to do the most for your building.
Dan and Kim, you want to comment quickly on this one as well?
Sure, yeah. As I'm thinking about this, I'd like to kind of jump on Jeff's presentation and his emphasis on commissioning and making sure these systems are set up and operate correctly. It is so key as they become more and more sophisticated. A maintenance technician's job is no longer, changing filters and belts on fans or air handling equipment. They have to integrally understand the building automation system, not only how to operate it, but how the system works from day to day, so they can monitor and analyze data to determine is something drifting or off here, and are we losing the benefit that we work so hard to get on day one. So commissioning, training of your technical personnel, those have been some really the key things from action level that we've emphasized.
I think the only thing I would add is, and you've kind of heard it from what these gentlemen have said, but I do think it's important to know your values, because you will have to make choices in the process of design, and you should always prioritize those things that align to your values and you're doing the things that you care about the most.
Questions from the audience? If anyone has one, feel free to shoot your hand up. Sir in the green shirt.
You know, I would say I often rely on my lab planners to dig into the equipment information. So it's usually, I think, from talking to manufacturers, but I don't know if folks up here. I'm not aware currently of like a platform like we have for some materials and some other things in the construction industry. I'm not aware of a platform where you can currently compare different pieces of equipment, but it's a great question, and it's definitely something that we really need to think hard about in labs.
Great, I guess I'll take one more. I guess the first two questions around collaborations and some of the how was focused around opportunities, and we know in this space there's tons of challenges, right? This content and the tools and the strategies are kind of moving beneath our feet every day, and you gotta, just like you all in the biohealth industry, right? Every time you look, maybe you miss something. I think, Kim, maybe you just mentioned the decision-making process and when you prioritize sustainability and maybe specifically carbon reduction goals, how that requires maybe a slight turn of perspective on how you make decisions that don't always align with traditional financial metrics. David, I'll target this one at you, knowing right the size of ThermoFisher and the maturity of some of your targets. Can you just comment maybe on the internal discussions about how you're considering first cost, then payback, then carbon reduction, and how that all fits in with what ends up happening on projects?
Sure. So yeah, it definitely started out with the goals, and then it's turned into corporate controls. And that wasn't an overnight thing. That was a multi-year journey to get from like, this is something we need to do. That's part of the easy part. Then when you start to figure out what are some of the costs, I think initially there was sometimes a little of a view from the C-suite of, well, we'll find efficiencies and we'll save money, right? And in some areas that's very true. But when it comes to the carbon reduction, we found at least that we did have to dedicate some capital, and so that's actually tracked by the corporate leadership team, the CEO and his staff. They get a quarterly report on are we on track with the commitments we've made, for this year so far in terms of our reduction, our reduction in carbon, as well as our capital spend towards that, because it's hard choices, like Kim said. If the parking lot needs repaired, the roof needs repaired, there's a new business opportunity, and all of those are competing for capital. But it started with a decision of this is what we're going to do, and then here's how we're going to track it, and then put together that really decades long plan, and that's what is working for us so far.
I'll open that one up if anyone else wants to comment on it. Otherwise, I got another one. I will shift to another one. Jeff, you talked about the training. I guess, Dan, you mentioned it too, the facility staff, and these are complex, interconnected buildings. They require ongoing management, and the educational and technical side of that can't be understated. So, Jeff, just again, on the exec side, thoughts about how you all approach that internally?
Yeah, buildings are just more and more complicated. It's not the simple heating and cooling switch. It just is more and more parts, especially with lab systems. And a lot of it is not just that small incremental change when people can be used to. It can be a big leap with some of these lab systems. And I think the key to getting people onboarded to those systems is just owner engagement throughout the design and construction process. Get your operations staff there, your engineers, your maintenance techs, in the field, in the design reviews, getting an understanding of the system from the start. So from design reviews, understanding the intent brought forward by the design team, so you can carry that forward through the construction, walking it and seeing the building before all the walls and ceilings are sealed up and you can't see as much. But the biggest moment to spend time in the building, I think, is during the startup and commissioning phase. You can hang out with the the professionals installing those systems and learn from them. They're usually really willing to answer a lot of questions, because I think all the construction teams like building systems that are going to be maintained and used appropriately over time. So they're very happy to share their knowledge to your staff while they start up those systems. Ask questions, we video record some of those things, but through all those steps, the operating staff of the building, once it's built, when it's time to hand over, they should be quite ready to understand the intent and keep that performance going forward from the day one of commissioning.
Dan, same question to you.
Yeah, I completely agree with Jeff. The importance of engaging those technical staff is key, and do it early. We had a very sophisticated building go up, and we actually plan to have one of our existing maintenance technicians take a lead position in managing that facility, and we got him involved in the design and construction activities from day one, so he could hear directly from the engineers and the architects how this building was supposed to operate. And it turned out it paid big benefits. He hit the road running once the building went live, and it was a really good move to do that. And I would also add too, for other supporting technical staff, the information is out there, and like Jeff mentioned, the installing contractors, the commissioning agents, they're usually very open to working side by side with a representative of the building to explain things. So, take advantage of that. I don't know how many projects in my history I've seen have been completed and it's a hard handover. From the time it's complete, here's your building, here's the keys, thank you and see you later. We really need to change that and become more active and, as Kim mentioned, more integrated in the process as an owner.
Thanks, Dan. And we only have a couple minutes left. I want to be good on time and get you out and keep networking and on with your day. I thought it might be nice, and we're trying to speak to every single person in this room, understanding that you're coming at this topic from probably a whole lot of different angles, big companies, small companies, so at least wanted to carve out a minute, starting with kind of those medium to large businesses. And Kim, we'll start with you, and then I think we'll go to David. Just if you're going to have a takeaway or a nugget for medium to large businesses, maybe you have a sustainability program, but there's an opportunity to scale it, or what would you say is a call to action if you were going to leave people with one?
I'm going to sound like a broken record again, I think, but again, you can't do everything. As Ben mentioned, some of this stuff gets overwhelming. That slide I had that showed all the things that kind of play into anyone's sustainability story. There's a lot you could focus on. So I think the first thing to do is just decide what your values are. What are the values of the folks in your supply chain? What's the most important thing that you think you can do? And then, talk to peers and partners and figure out what the right path forward is for you with the first few things you can do.
Yeah, and I think talk to your, you're going to have customers that are pushing you in this direction if you're in the life sciences industry. So don't be shy about asking, what did you do? What do you recommend? How do we partner together on this? A lot of the bigger companies that have focused on this, we want to pull our suppliers along, and we're very happy to spend time with you and show the things that we've been doing and what may work for you, and try to give some ideas. So as you're getting that customer pushback, that old sales adage of don't say no, say yes but, and talk to them about what they might be able to do to support you or give you some ideas that are actually actionable.
David, and then the last minute, we'll turn to Jeff and then Dan, thinking about maybe smaller businesses? To your point, Jeff, on the earlier scale of the exact trajectory, what would you say? You know, these people may have just leased spaces, no owned building assets. What are the nuggets you'd like to leave them with?
I think as when you're leasing buildings, you can still be an informed tenant and guide, you know, whether it's the site you end up moving into or the practices of how you run the building in support of the owner. Just being an informed tenant can help you make right decisions and help the building run its best. I mean, the classic thing, turn off the light switch. Well, maybe it's closing the sash at the end of the day, some version of that. Just knowing, I think you can guide back to the owner some good principles.
Yeah, my takeaway would be, as far as new construction projects, like the ones that we have gone through, is don't wait or procrastinate on the planning for sustainability. It should be a topic of discussion on day one at the programming level, at the design development level, all the way through. And even if those goals may not be achievable from a financial standpoint, keep in mind, we've experienced that in pretty much all of our new buildings, we plan in contingencies that allow us to adapt and put sustainable features in the future. We had an extremely large warehouse building, and it was a prime candidate for solar photovoltaic. That didn't work on day one for us, but we went the extra step of making sure that roof structure was ready to go in the near future when we were ready to pull the trigger on that. And since then, we've come back and implemented that. So even when it can't be done on day one, think about the future and how you can adapt your buildings to make it work in the future.
I think that's a perfect spot to leave it. We want to keep the conversation going. We're all in this together. The other takeaway from me is always have a fun fact ready and enjoy the rest of your day. I don't know what's next. I think lunch, but I'll invite Kareem back up.
All right, well, thank you everyone for attending this session. Right now, we will have the lunch, which is going to be sponsored by Acro Biosciences. So that is down in Hall A, where we were at for the keynote. So.